recording. All right, so we're going to hope Carlene's okay with that. So we are so catching you guys up. We are in Leviticus chapter 9, Bart, and we just figured out that this is the ordination of the priests. And what verse did we stop on, guys? 7. We're in verse 7, chapter 9. It says, "And Moshe said to Aaron, go to the altar and prepare your purification offering, your burnt offering, make atonement for yourself and for the people, and make the offering of the people and make atonement for them as Jehovah has commanded." So Aharon came near to the altar and slaughtered the calf of the purification offering, which was for himself. And the sons of, can he purify the people before he purifies himself? There's an order to things that have to take place, right? So Aharon came near to the altar and slaughtered the calf of the sin offering, which was for himself. And the sons of Aharon brought the blood to him, and he dipped his finger in the blood and put it on the horns of the altar and poured the blood at the base of the altar. Can you think of something else recently that we poured the blood at the base of the altar?
All of the lambs.
256,000 lambs a year at the base of that altar, right? Okay, Pesach. And the fat and the kidneys and the appendage of the liver of the purification offering he burned on the altar, and Jehovah had commanded Moshe. And why do we burn the kidneys and the appendage of the liver? Do you guys remember why? Why?
So they're not tempted to do divination. Correct,
because all the other countries around them were doing divination with those parts. So God said, burn them, and then you can't do that. And the flesh and the skin he burned with the fire outside the camp. And he slaughtered the burnt offering, and the sons of Aaron presented to him the blood, which he sprinkled on the altar all around. And they presented the burnt offering to him with its pieces and head, and he burned them on the altar. And he washed the entrails and the legs and burned them with the burnt offering on the altar. And he brought the people's offering and took the goat, which was the purification offering for the people, and slaughtered it. So Aaron was purified. Now he can take care of the next group of people, right? Okay. And slaughtered it and made a purification offering like the first one. And he brought the burnt offering and made it according to the right ruling. He also brought the grain offering and filled his hands with it and burned it on the altar, besides the burnt offering of the morning. What was the burnt offering of the morning?
Probably just the daily offering.
It sounds like the Tamid offering to me. And he slaughtered the bull and the ram as peace offerings, which were for the people. And Aharon's sons presented him with the blood, and he sprinkled it on the altar all around. And depending upon which offering you do, the blood goes different places. So sometimes it goes all around the altar. Sometimes it goes on the base of the altar. Sometimes it goes on the horns of the altar. Sometimes it goes on only certain horns of the altar. And they exclude certain horns. Depends on the offering. And the fat and the bull and the ram and the fat tail and the covering and the kidneys and the appendages on the liver. Verse 20. And they placed the fat on the breast, and he burned the fat on the altar. But the breast and the right thigh Aaron waved as a wave offering before Jehovah, as Moshe had commanded. Now, I was studying the wave offering recently as we were getting ready for first fruits, because they also waved things there. And it was really interesting because there are commentaries that talk about how they waved it 6 directions. And there is one place with the first fruits offering, it says to wave it, basically to the west and the east and the north and the south and up and down. So they would actually point all of these directions and do whatever it was that they did, and then they would do it down low, and then they would do it down up high. So there seems to be, my first thought in English reading this, when I saw wave offering, I assumed they were doing semaphore, landing a plane on a carrier type thing. Yeah. So it's really, the wave it's an elevation. It's an up and down offering. Okay. Which makes sense when you realize that Yeshua is the first fruits. He went up and then came back down, and then he went back up. Okay, so it's an up and down thing. 22. Then Aaron lifted up his hand toward the people and blessed them, and came down from making the purification and the burnt offerings and the peace offerings. Where did he come down from?
Yeah.
The altar. So he's up. He's went up the ramp onto the altar. Now he's come down the ramp, right? And Moshe and Aaron went into the tent of meeting and came out and blessed the people. And the esteem of Yehovah appeared to all of the people. And fire came out from before Yehovah and consumed the burnt offering and the fat offering on the altar. And all the people saw, and what did they do?
Shouted.
You have shouted. What?
Fell face down.
Fell face down. What noise did they make in yours? Cried. Okay.
I have a note that says sing for joy.
Yeah, this is an exulting kind of noise, a singing kind of noise. So cried is okay, but I don't necessarily think joyful though when I think crying in English. Okay, so yeah, this was a shout of joy, an acclamation. Okay, so I always kind of find there are certain things that always seem to happen during the week whenever we're getting ready for Shabbat. I'm always looking through my week for tiny little events that seem to make, like a word will make sense or something like that, or a story, So last night, Zach and Judah and I are watching a movie called 12 Strong. And this is about just after 9/11 when we sent the first team of special forces into Afghanistan. And they all had to learn how to ride horseback to get around and stuff like this. And so the first thing you see is that they've made friends with the warlords over there. And so now we're going to call airstrikes in to bomb these little villages full of Taliban. And the first airstrike comes in, and it's way off, like a block away type thing, And all of the Afghanis are on the side of the hill, and every time a bomb hits, they're all like, yeah, this is great. They're just cheering like crazy. And it totally missed, right? But that's just the shout of acclamation. It's the shout of, like, the bomb went off, and they're just thrilled that a bomb went off, right? So that's the exultation kind of feeling there. Or maybe your football team gets the goal or something like that. Everybody cheers. In fact, cheering might actually be a good word there. Again, we kind of relate cheering to games. So it kind of has a lesser context, but the idea of cheering for God, that you're on His side, that kind of thing. Okay, so let's hit that verse one more time. The esteem appeared to all the people. Fire came out from before Yehovah and consumed the burnt offering and the fat on the altar, and all the people saw and shouted and fell on their faces. So when mine says cried and fell on their faces, were they afraid of God in fear, going, hit the deck, like that?
I would have been.
What is the word there? What does it mean?
Shout and fell on their faces.
Word of joy.
It's
Joy.
That's for the shout part. But what's the word for fell?
Oh, it's a fall, which means to fall. Literally.
Okay, so when you fall on your face in Hebrew, what are you doing?
Prostrating.
You're worshiping. You're prostrating. Okay, so there's no negative connotation to this. They're not crying and they're not in fear falling down. Unless you understand fear is reverence, then they're worshiping. Okay, so they saw the event and they got down on their knees and they worshiped God, right? So there's no negative connotation to those words. But in English, they carry lots of baggage for us. Okay, so now...
Everything goes wrong.
Huh?
Everything goes off the track.
So now, remember, so you go back to chapter 8 now. We've had 7 days of them being set apart for their ordination. What day are we on now? This is the 8th day, the first day of their new job, right? How do you feel on the first day of your new job? A little nervous and things like that, right? Okay.
Am I going to do everything right?
Exactly. Okay. So that starts us to chapter 10 now. So, and Nadav and Abihu, the sons of Aharon, each took his fire holder and put fire in it. So what's a fire holder?
Censer.
What's a censer?
A scoop or a tray or something that holds coals.
Correct. A scoop. It's a dustpan.
Yeah.
Okay. A tiny shovel. Okay. If you've had a fireplace, you've always had they have like the little set. It's a poker and a brush and a shovel. That shovel is the censer.
Yeah, the litter box.
The litter box scoop. Yes. Okay.
Not positive.
Although you don't want to stick the fire coals in the litter box. That could be really bad. Okay, so they took their fire holder, their censer, and put fire in it, and put incense on it. What's the it? On the fire, yeah. So they put coals in the scoop, and they put incense on the coals, right? And brought strange fire before Jehovah, which he had not commanded them. Yeah, strange fire. What is strange fire?
Something that God didn't approve of.
Mm-hmm.
It's like maybe a weird mixture to incense that wasn't right, or
Very possible. Yep.
Didn't the coals, didn't they have to come from the altar?
Yeah, so the coals, the only thing that we know of that's burning at this moment is the outer altar.
Is that the Zerah word? Zerah. Zerah.
Yes, strange fire. Yes, Zerah. So according to the text, we don't have the inner altar necessarily burning yet. Okay, we don't see that in the text. So they would be either bringing coals from the altar that Jehovah just started, right? So the fire. So the idea is that God showed up. He appeared in some fashion. Okay, fire came out from him, and it consumed the burnt offering, and that fire is now burning on that altar. Okay.
Or they went out to their own fire pit and just said, "Ooh, I need some coals."
So then the other option is they got their own coals. Okay.
It would seem more logical because for some reason this doesn't seem like they were doing this in front of everybody. Just the connotation was kind of like
we don't have anything that says that it just occurred right after that. It could
Yeah,
have
that's
been
true.
at some other time.
Yeah. The assumption is that this is happening on the first day, because the Torah portion is called Shemini, so it's all about the 8th day. But there's nothing specifically anywhere else in the text that confirms that. So they brought this strange fire. Do you guys have other words for strange? Alien. What was the other one I saw? Unauthorized. So something was wrong with the coals. Something was wrong with the the incense they put on there. Could have been multiple. Could have been both of them. They brought strange fire before Yahweh, which he had not commanded them. And fire came out from Jehovah and consumed them, and they died before Jehovah. So where'd the fire come from? From Jehovah, right?
and wasn't at this time, wasn't all of this supposed to be done by Aaron himself and not his sons until for succession?
So the altar was only ever started by God, the main altar.
Mm-hmm.
So where they're bringing the fire to seems to be at question,
Yeah, that's true.
right?
God didn't want it defiled by this strange.
Yeah, so if they're bringing the fire, because it doesn't make sense for them to bring the fire to the big altar, it's already on fire. So if they're bringing that fire to the priestly altar in the holy place, that would defile everything. Okay, that seems to make the most sense to most of the scholars I've read. So, so to prevent the whole tabernacle from being defiled, then God stops them. Okay, verse 3. Then Moshe said to Aharon, "This is what Jehovah spoke, saying, by those who come near me, let me be set apart, and before all the people, let me be esteemed." And Aharon was silent. All right, let me scoot through my notes here for a second to catch up.
All the weirdest things to have happen at one of the most important times ever. I mean, it was just like such a freak thing to have happen, unless I don't think it was premeditated by that they had hatched this up.
Okay, so that takes us to what's the motivation for them doing what they did? Okay, glad you brought it up. Let me get to my notes.
Really?
So what are the possibilities for the motivation for what they're doing? Okay.
Presumptuousness, if nothing else.
I would say, yeah, maybe that. Presumption.
Or perhaps they just flat didn't understand.
So ignorance
Procedure.
then.
Fear.
Okay. How would fear lead them to do that?
God just started that fire. I'm a little afraid to approach it. I'll get this fire.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, I can see that.
Good. Anything else?
Maybe they wanted to esteem
Pride,
for themselves.
Okay, so I mean, kind of combining these two: arrogance,
Okay.
pride. Okay.
I don't know. It kind of smacks of something positive in some ways. I mean,
Maybe they were partaking of fragrant herbs beforehand. Or
They were the ones who made the spices, so
they were burning.
okay.
well, it's that they were under the influence of something.
Okay. How about under
that
the influence?
A little further on, it says you shouldn't have strong drink
You're
or
reading
intoxicant.
ahead. Okay, good.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So we'll include under the influence in there. Okay, it could be
Fragrant cane or
walking while into a WWI, walking while intoxicated. How about jealousy? How could jealousy apply?
Dad's getting all this credit. We're just lowly fire starters.
Good. Okay. How about zealotry? How would zealotry fit?
Now, if they were truly zealous, they would have just gone up and gotten the good fire.
I don't know.
Okay.
Because if they're zealous, they're really wanting to do it right. Unless they just didn't know, that's
What-
ignorance.
Yeah, so it's kind of a twofold thing. So zealotry is just, we want to do this, we're going to do this to honor him or something like that. But then if you combine that with ignorance, you get a whole new thing there. Okay, good. So we have a list now of possible motivations, and we have some ancient scholars that also had that same list and got to talk through these different motivations also. So there was
fire on an incense.
So
incense?
we have another
flame?
big example of fire coming down from God and starting an altar in Scripture. Where was that?
Douse mine with water and it'll still catch fire.
Yeah, so this is the prophets
Is
of
it
Baal.
Elisha?
No. Eliyahu.
Eliyahu.
So Elijah is on Mount Carmel with the prophets of Baal, and he literally taunts them, describing how their God's probably off in the bathroom, and he's busy, and all these things. And so it gets to the point where he puts water on the altar and stuff, like, and God still just consumes the whole thing, right? Okay, fire coming out of heaven, starting an altar. So we have witnesses, other witnesses of this. If we stopped reading at this point, when we get to the end of chapter 9 there, before we get to the Nadab and Abihu thing, if we just took chapter 9 by itself, you would think, wow, what a great first day. These guys are really successful, okay? It's only when you add chapter 10 to the context that things aren't turning out so well, right? So again, that's why, in Torah, there are no chapter markers. You have to figure out where the text is, right? Where the story, the narrative starts and stops and things like that. Okay, let me go back to my notes. Did that. Okay, so let's go back to 10 verse 2. Fire came out from Yehovah and consumed them, and they died before Yehovah. Then Moshe said to Aaron, "This is what Yehovah spoke, saying, by those who come near me, let me be set apart, and before all the people, let me be esteemed." And Aharon was silent. So let's kind of take that sentence, those two sentences apart. Where were you at?
I'm sorry. Silent.
Okay. So then Moshe said, right verse? Yeah, Moshe said to Aharon, "This is what Yehovah spoke, saying, by those who come near me." Who are they?
Priests.
The priests are the ones who draw near, okay?
Mhm.
And that word to come near, to draw near, if it's used in Leviticus, it means to bring sacrifices, okay? So it's not just like you're standing next to me. Like if I stand next to Philip, I could use that word to describe it. But in the book of Leviticus, it specifically is referring to those who bring sacrifices. So we're talking about the priests. Those who come near me, let me be set apart, holy. So what does holy mean?
Set apart.
Use another way to describe that.
Special.
Okay, special. Yeah. Yeah, so it's not common. But notice that it's the me that's set apart. By those who come near me, let me be set apart. What's the me?
Mike says, I will be treated as holy.
Because they had all those other gods, and so he needs to be the god. Not all these little.
True.
They were worshiping and all sacrificing.
Rich, do you see an I anywhere in there?
Mm-mm. Wait, in verse 3?
Yeah. By those who come near me.
No, I.
So yeah, so by those who come near me, let me be set apart. So how does God get set apart?
By the actions of people.
Yeah, so their actions are what demonstrate that holiness. Now, Yah is holy by himself. He doesn't need us to be holy.
He shows himself to everybody else that way by what people do to and for him.
Yeah, so the role of the priests is to demonstrate that by their actions. Okay?
Maybe there was some form of idolatry connected with the strange fire. was bringing maybe.
So if God says do X and you do Y, we could say it's rebelliousness, but what form is that? If you're not doing what God says, someone else is your God. You've made something else your God, whether that's you or an object or whatever.
Or if people saw them, for example, grab coals from the wrong place, not the wrong, but from a common place, then using those would show, well, how is he special? You're using an ordinary coal.
Correct.
So
Correct.
A casual observer, maybe that's not part of Israel, but just sitting in the grandstands watching, would think, oh, it's just plain old fire.
So we're going to come back to not just the guy sitting in the grandstand, but we're going to come back to the Israelites watching too. I think that's you're making a great point, but I think it's both. And before all the people, let me be esteemed. And Aharon was silent. So try to draw a picture in your head of what has just happened. Aaron, the high priest, is standing there. His two sons are there. And what just happened to his two sons?
I'll take them.
They're dead. They're laying there dead. Okay? And now God says, by those who come near me, let me be set apart. And before all the people, let me be esteemed.
I think that was pointed at Aaron.
It's definitely at Aaron.
Yeah, it's like, don't you say anything.
He's speaking to Aaron.
Yeah.
So,
be careful. Warning.
Yeah, this is definitely like a giant beware sign, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now, I was just reading this verse again, and then Moshe said to Aaron, it is what Jehovah spoke, saying. Did he say that in another place too? Because that's what this is what the text of them. Yeah, it's what it's inferring. It is what the Lord spoke, saying.
So God spoke.
This is a quote from somewhere else.
God spoke to Moses. Moses told it to Aaron.
I think it would be, this is what Jehovah told me. But it has to me it has a weird text.
So the phrase there, spoke, saying, is consistent all throughout Torah. It's what is that? Vayomer.
Mm-hmm.
So spoke is actually going to be from the root word devar, devarim.
Yeah. Well, it was more that it is what instead of, it's like the text. What am I trying to say? The English. I've heard
Translation?
No, I'm forgetting the word that I want.
Like an object,
No.
subject type thing.
It's. I'm trying to say it's past, present, future.
A tense.
Tense, not text. That's the word I was trying to find. It's the tense of the verb.
Got it.
Seemed weird.
Yeah, it's just.
Maybe it's translation.
Yeah, it's just a translation thing. So, so the question becomes then, what is the explanation for Moses's comment? So this, it seems when you read this, it's really cryptic. What we're all struggling with is like, why is he saying this? What's the point of saying this? What's it going to accomplish?
It's going to keep Aaron from getting fried like his sons.
Okay.
By speaking out.
Yeah. So when we make mistakes, as the average Reuben in the tribe, that's a normal thing. Okay, It's not an abnormal thing to err. Okay, but when a priest makes mistakes, there are catastrophic consequences that can come from that. Okay, so
It affects the whole of Israel.
it can affect the whole of Israel then. So if I make a ruling about something, and then everybody goes out and is teaching that ruling to everybody, and that ruling is wrong, then large numbers of people could be affected by that, right? So leadership carries a burden with it, a higher level, a higher burden. So Aaron is essentially getting reproved here. He's getting corrected, okay?
I wonder if he did not tell his sons what he was supposed to have told them. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, the text doesn't give us every little detail, and that's why we're supposed to be working these things out.
Yeah,
It's
so
like they've been spending like 7 days getting ready for just this event. It just seems so weird to have this random thing just.
Okay,
What,
so
we didn't talk about this for 7 days?
right. Okay, so see, this is why we actually said the Torah portion's in 9, but you have to understand the last paragraph of 8. So for 7 days, they could have been studying what to do, right?
well, I'm
This
sure
is
they would have.
when you go out. You're going to be responsible for doing these things, or things. Got a little Torah curriculum for priests or something like that, right? And then all of a sudden, boom! First day of work, they totally, they put milkshakes in the cheeseburger machine, and everything goes kittywampus, right? Okay. So Moses is bringing correction to Aaron, and he's essentially saying they got what they deserved. That sounds pretty harsh. Because remember, he's saying it while his 2 kids are still fried on the ground. Is that what you want to hear when you just saw your 2 kids die? Does that come across as compassionate?
Well, maybe for the whole of the people, as opposed to just those 2.
Good.
The benefit for the many far outweighs the
Mm-hmm.
sacrifice of the 2.
Well, wasn't that Mao?
Oh, it was Star
No, I
Trek.
think it
Oh,
was
Star Trek. Okay.
That's what I remember.
Great.
Captain Kirk.
Okay.
The needs of the
So
Spock.
so here are the 2 sons that have died. Aaron's standing there, and
Moses is going, oh, thank God it was just those 2.
We could have all been fried.
right, yeah. So and who is Moses to Aaron? It's his brother that's giving him the news, right?
His younger brother.
His younger brother giving him the news. Okay.
Told your kids to mind. Oh.
No, if you think about it, if they had been allowed to continue,
Maybe it would have been another, so how many thousands swallowed by the earth?
yeah, no kidding.
Yeah,
They
another
could've
Korah-like
swallowed up the
event or
whole-
something.
Where a plague could have started.
Yeah, because they'll never make another mistake.
Yeah. They'll get it all right from here on out. Yeah.
It seems like it just things for those people just always went downhill for some reason.
I mean, that's why Aaron was silent. He understood it, and he's like, yep, you're right.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to say, but it's true.
So if you're willing to deal with reality, and someone speaks truth into your life, even though it hurts, there's nothing left to say. The problem is when you don't think that's the reality, and then you argue about it. You're not accepting the thing is, he's got 2 dead bodies here.
Yeah.
There's nothing in question about this.
You don't want
right?
to just open your mouth and just let it out.
Because this
Could be
definitely
next.
wasn't some other Joe out of the congregation. This was
Right.
from the head guy.
Yeah, so
Very
so
head guy.
Aaron's been right next to Moses this whole time, Moses hears from God. Aaron knows he's hearing from God. There's no question about that. Other people will question if Moses is hearing from God. But Aaron, we don't see anything about Aaron questioning whether Moses is hearing from God. Aaron's on board. Aaron's now the high priest. So what's the takeaway lesson from that? The kids are dead. Aaron's silent. Moses has reproved them. What's the lesson?
I think the lesson is, even in the most sacred of times, things can go wrong. I mean, I'm just kind of captivated by the fact that they had built up for 7 days to this event, and
Just
fire
tripping,
came
falling
down,
face.
and the people were worshiping, and it was all just falling into place, and then all of a sudden it just went off the cliff.
And why? Why did it go off the cliff?
Because two people did something wrong. Important people.
Key important people blew it, right?
Right? Amy said something that the people are worshiping, and these two take away from that worship. That's really wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what they were out of order, yes, but taking away from the worship of the people and from what was really going on, they're taking the focus off of that and putting it back on themselves.
And what's the role of the priest?
To bring the focus on God.
Yeah, to bring the focus.
The priest is supposed to be
The connector.
he connects things.
Facilitator.
But it's not about him. He's supposed to be invisible in the
No, that's why he doesn't
situation.
have a moon.
Yeah, no moves. That's right. Okay, it's nice to know you guys listen about these things. So few people ever really understand the responsibility that the higher echelon of any leadership team actually goes through. Right? So this movie that we're watching last night. So they've dropped this platoon of special forces guys into northern Afghanistan to deal with to create an alliance with these northern rebels, right? And in the middle of they have, like, when this happened, we weren't ready for war. We weren't on a war footing or anything like that. So we had the U.S. Army had military government had to ramp up everything to happen. So when they send all these troops over there, the scenes are just really funny. They have like Cabela's and REI equipment. They're getting Cabela's underwear over to the guys because the special forces guys didn't even have long johns, military issue long johns over there. And here they are at 10,000 foot mountains fighting a war, right? So they've got all the wrong equipment. I mean, just everything's just completely wrong with this event. And so this guy that they've picked to be in charge, he had never led in combat before. So he's the captain of a special forces unit, but he's never actually been in combat. But everybody stood up for him to the colonel to make the decision that he should be the leader. So all of his men stood behind him. So we want him. So they drop him into the situation. They make it, and he's got 21 days to solve this problem. Okay, he makes it past the first village, working with these Afghan warlords, and he's doing all the right stuff. And he opens up his computer. They have a satellite link. And here's a message from Donald Rumsfeld, the head of the Defense Department, right? And he says something to the effect of, you know the exact quote, something to the effect of, I wish you guys would get your ass moving and get this done faster. This guy's thousands of miles away. He has no clue what this guy's going through, right? People don't understand what leadership goes through quite often, on both sides sometimes,
Oh gosh.
because they're not right there
Yeah.
dealing with the problem.
It's like our superintendent. He's like, I don't care, make it happen.
Okay?
What do you do with that?
And on the other end, the kids have no idea what the bus drivers go through when they're putting them through hell on the bus, right? So So yeah, unless you're there, you don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is the whole point is that you got to get the leadership, those that are over you, the tactical way, the correct tactical way to deal with them is invite them to you and let them see. Because they're just missing the picture. Okay. So so here's Moses and Aaron and Aaron's sons. They're at the top of the pecking order here, right? Ultimate responsibility for the priesthood rests with them. And if something goes wrong, it will affect the whole nation, right? So if we don't get this right down the road, it's just going to have more and more problems, okay? And those who are in public position are in more jeopardy if they break the limits of their charge. If you're in a public position, everybody's watching, okay? And so the consequences, the effects can be even greater. I was listening to this guy who's a rabbi teach on this. I think he's probably Reform. But anyway, he was telling a story. He said this Jewish person told him once that at his bar mitzvah, the rabbi embarrassed him. So they're up on the stage, they're doing their ceremony or whatever it is they do, and so the rabbi tells the story, and it embarrasses the kid. Okay, and so the kid never went back to synagogue again because the rabbi embarrassed him. And so it's the kid telling this other rabbi now the story, the story that this happened to me. And the difficulty is that if no one tells a math teacher, I'm never doing math again because you embarrassed me. It doesn't happen. Okay. It's not like, well, I'll never spell again, darn you. You made me stand up in front of class again. You'll get mad, but you're going to get over it, okay? But when the person standing there is supposed to be representing God, that carries a whole different weight, okay? Because now you are a moral leader for them, okay? And this is the position Aaron finds himself in, okay? If Yah would have allowed this to pass, the results within the temple could have been catastrophic. We've already kind of talked about that. We don't know what could have, not only at that one event, but then if this lackadaisical attitude, whatever has caused it, were to continue, it would just compound then, okay? And people are watching this event, then here's another event, people are watching, here's another event, more people are watching, and it just infects the camp then.
Well, just like Eli's sons and what they did to all of Israel.
Exactly.
It made a mess.
Yep. Perfect example. Well, I mean, in terms of an analogy, so I'm sure not every person in the camp was right at the golden calf, yet the whole camp suffered because of the golden calf event.
I would just
right?
say, Aaron's actions and how that may have affected his son's judgment, actions. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll get to that because we'll get to that in a second. Let's go back to verse 4 now, or start into verse 4. And Moshe called to Mishael and to Elzaphan, the sons of Uzziel, the uncle of Aaron. So, okay, what's the relationship there? So this is Aaron's cousins. Is that right? Because they don't have a word for cousin in Hebrew. So they've got to tell you, whose sons they are and stuff, right? So he says to them, come near take your brothers from before the set apart place out of the camp. So they came near and took them by their long shirts out of the camp, as Moshe had said.
So that means that not even their clothes were consumed, just two men. Because they carried them out by their tunics.
Right, yeah. So they have their robes, and they've just grabbed the robe. So their body could still be there. It could just be charred. Could be like, stormtroopers when they get shot in Star Wars. That you don't just, there's a body in there, but you don't see it.
Yeah.
We don't know the exact detail. Yeah. So what it means by it consumed them, we don't exactly know the details.
It didn't consume their tunic.
Yeah.
And there was something to drag.
Well, and there was something in it.
Yes.
We just don't know the condition of it.
Yeah.
So why is Aaron not and his sons not carrying them out?
Well, they're clean.
Because they would be defiled if they touched the dead body. And if that happened, there would then be no working priesthood. Okay, so again, the idea, the assumption here is this is all on day one, right? So we would have went for 7 days getting this ready, started it, and now I have no one to be a priesthood. Okay? Yeah. So verse, where was that? Verse 6. And Moshe said to Aharon and to Eleazar and to Ithamar his sons, do not unbind your heads nor tear your garments, lest you die, and wrath come upon all of the people. But let your brothers, all the house of Israel, bewail the burning which Jehovah has kindled. So, and Moshe said to Aaron and to Eleazar and Ithamar. Who are Eleazar and Ithamar? His other two sons, the live sons, right? Do not unbind your heads. What does that mean?
Don't take off your turban.
Don't take off your turban.
It's
Okay.
like you guys are filling in.
Yeah, you just got promoted. This is like look what could happen to you too, right? Yeah. Field promotions are always fun. Do not unbind your heads nor tear your garments. If they tore their garments, disqualification. Okay, lest you die, and wrath come upon all the people. So the priesthood is going to act as a protective dome barrier for all of the people, right? And so if there's no priesthood, you've got a big problem, okay? Because they act as a protective covering. And garments, lest you die. But let your brothers, all the house of Israel, bewail the burning which Jehovah has kindled. So what is bewail? Mourning. They're crying the loss, right? Are the priests allowed to do this? They couldn't show emotion during this. Okay? And do not go out from the door of the tent of meeting, lest you die. For the anointing oil of Jehovah is upon you, and they did according to the word of Moshe.
So which tent of meeting is this at?
Well, I'm assuming if they're talking about that this is out by the big altar, that they're inside the tabernacle area.
So they're inside the center
Yeah, unless they went back out to the tent of meeting, which is where they were ordained at. So it's not real clear what we're talking about there.
Well, if the fire came down on the altar, it's hard to tell.
Let's see, where's that verse? So look at verse 7 again. Do not go out from the door of the tent of meeting lest you die, for the anointing oil of Jehovah is upon you. So why doesn't he want them to go out? Why do they have to stay at the tent of meeting? They're anointed, and if they go out, what will happen? they'll die. So it's for their own safety that they stay inside of the tent of meeting, or at least at the door there, okay, some area around it maybe. So the priests aren't allowed to mourn during this time for their family. They have the priesthood is required, especially the upper echelon here, is required to stay on task no matter what. They are not allowed to leave their task. So I go back to my movie last night. So here's our captain. They're thrown into this situation. And when he meets the first warlord, the warlord doesn't want to talk to him. He wants to talk to the next guy in command. And it's really irritating him because he's the captain. And he's supposed to be getting, talked to by this guy. He's the deal maker here. And all this guy wants to do is talk to this other guy. And he's like, why? And he says, because his eyes have killed people and yours haven't. So it immediately sets up this, like, no one's ever told him that this guy's never been in combat, but somehow he knows, okay? And so it sets up this loggerhead between them, okay? So now they go out into their first battle, and you see that there's this little kid standing, he's like 14, 15-year-old kid standing next to him with a AK-47, shooting the Taliban alongside, and then he gets killed, the little kid gets killed, and he sees this. And this is his first experience of the horrors of war. And for a moment, he takes his eyes off the task. You can't take your eyes off the task. You can't mourn now. You mourn when the battle's done. But while the battle is ensuing, you can't stop to mourn the loss, right? That's the attitude of the priesthood. You can't stop to mourn. They are constantly 24/7, 365, or maybe in their case 360. Depends if you use the Enoch calendar. They are constantly moving ahead. Never allowed to go to the left or the right. It's just this constant thing. I'm focused on life. I have to keep my eyes on God. All right, verse 8. Is that where we're at? Yep. And Jehovah spoke to Aharon, saying, did you catch that? What's different in that verse?
Yah spoke to Aaron this time.
Now Yah speaking to Aaron. Okay, this is a key thing. Now, it happens a couple times in Scripture, but 99% of the time, it's always God speaking to Moses or to Moses and Aaron. Okay, only a couple times is it ever just to Aaron. Do not drink wine or strong drink, you nor your sons with you, when you go into the tent of meeting, lest you die, a law forever throughout your generations. So the question arises, why is he saying this to Aaron?
Maybe because of his sins.
Okay, that would be the connection to the sons, potentially, right? So that part of the text is broken into two sections here. So in mine, we ended law forever throughout your generations, comma. So we're not done with the thought. So as to make a distinction between the set apart and the profane, and between the unclean and the clean, and to teach the children of Israel all the laws which Jehovah has spoken to them by the hand of Moshe. That's the complete thought. So when the scholars look at that, the question they ask is, because there's two parts to the text, don't drink and teach. What they want to ask is, what's the connection between the don't drinking and the teaching? Why is that in one paragraph thought?
Could it be because it was fermented and there is yeast in the wine?
So how does that connect it to the teaching?
You should have told me.
Okay.
Because you can't have yeast in any offering. I just wondered if there's
But there is,
But the offering was just fire and incense. So
they may have consumed wine and it had yeast.
okay. So you're saying they were drinking and that had yeast in it.
Possibly,
Got it.
we don't honestly know.
Okay. So
Your decision making is kind of sharp.
yeah, so if you're drinking, then your decision-making processes
Could be,
are impaired.
could be impaired,
Okay.
not necessarily, but could be.
Well, and we'll get to how much you can have before you're impaired,
you know what?
because that might vary.
It says, my verse 10 says, makes a distinction between holy and profane, between unclean and clean. So for some reason, that drinking and going into the tent of meeting profanes the holy, makes unclean the clean.
So amongst scholars, modern scholars, they see this piece as being one of the greatest things that was ever taught in the temple. The distinction between common and profane and holy and unholy. Nowhere else on the planet is that taught, except in the temple of God. That was key to this whole thing working out, okay? And for the people of God to understand that distinction. So the role of the priest is to teach that to people, right? So if the priest happens to be impaired, then that teaching could be impaired. He could make a wrong judgment about something.
Well, think of if the congregation saw the priest drunk, what would they think?
Okay.
Agree. What's he doing up there?
So
Fall off the hill.
Yeah.
I don't think I should tell that joke. So today you have people that show up in your facility, I'm sure, who have had what do we call it here, DUIs. They've been impaired and made poor judgments on the road and stuff like that. So that is a huge deal to us in our culture. Okay, we have Moms Against Drunk Driving and organizations all about this, trying to get it to stop and things. And we tell the kids, don't do that. And on and on and on. We go out of our way to talk about this. How much more trouble could a priest cause if he was impaired at an altar of God? Right?
Yeah, quite a bit.
So the Kohen shows up, priest shows up, Nicole brings this item. She wants to know, is this clean or unclean, or is it holy or unholy? And the Kohen has had a few shots of Kiddush too much, and gives her bad advice, right? So then now she's defiled, and she walks through the middle of the temple or something like that. Okay?
Not anyone.
Whoever, yeah, could be anybody. I just hate picking on Phil all the time, so I don't want him to get like a bad self-esteem. So you are you've walked up to the priest. You have this question for him, and he gives you the answer. You're walking through the courts, and you see your friend, and you're like, "Hey, did you go talk to the priest about that issue and stuff? How did it turn out?" He says, "Oh yeah, he said it was totally fine. Of course, I did smell alcohol in his breath." So what do you do with that now? Was the priest right? Was he wrong? But it's now spreading. Okay. Oh yeah, we can all do that. He said it was fine. He was swaggering when he said it, but I think he's okay.
And then you go home and say, I went and talked to the high priest today. You know what? And then so mama goes and tells her neighbor, and pretty soon it's a bad thing.
Right. It just becomes an insidious thing through the camp. It infects the camp.
Yes.
And it was the priest, it was the lack of leadership by the priest or responsibility by the priest that caused that chain reaction. Okay.
See, and the way I look at things, this would not be here if it wasn't connected to those two men that died.
And that's the whole point. Is the scholars look at this, that's the question they're asking, is why place it here? Okay. And yeah, the fact that he's speaking right at Aaron. Yes. And we'll dig into that in just a second a little bit more. So now, Rich gets called in. He's doing security for the courtroom. He brings some people up, walks them into the courtroom. He's minding his own business, just standing over there watching his client. And the judge comes in, sits down on the bench, calls the court to order. Rich looks up at the bench and he sees a half bottle of scotch up there and a glass half full. And the judge, he now gives the verdict for the case. Bang.
Misses the desk.
Yeah. but we can go there in a second. Even if he doesn't miss the desk, what's the perception?
He's in
You haven't been drinking yet. You will be sure.
Okay, so do I have case for an appeal? Maybe,
Sure do.
right? Okay.
Well, depends on what he says. Yeah.
So I'm assuming it didn't come down well for you, Pam. So
We have.
I've heard you stop drinking when you were 10, though. But yeah, so now, the judge comes in and he's swaggering. He takes his gavel and staggering. That'd be
Swaggering.
swaggering. That'd be kind of like a John Wayne kind of thing. So he's staggering in. He misses the gavel. So now this is just ripe for problems, for appeals and stuff like that. So now the judge gets a reputation amongst the other lawyers, amongst the other judges. No one wants to trust his opinion. Again, it just snowballs. Okay. Leadership.
Ends up on the Brady list.
Ends up on the Brady list. So leadership has a higher responsibility. We see that in our own court system today. In fact, we actually attempt to go way out of the way by giving them whole sets of ethical standards and binders full of information they're supposed to follow, from everything about, deleting emails that don't belong to you to whatever, or how to interact with people, that are in the room with you and stuff, and what you can say and can't say. And we have reams of ethical standards for our judges regarding bank accounts and investments. And so there's no appearance of evil going on. They don't always follow that, and that's where the problems start.
Thankfully, the politicians.
Yes, exactly. So the leader must always keep, in this case, back to the priesthood, okay? The leader must always keep in mind what Yah wants. The priesthood, again, they're intercessors. They're supposed to disappear, okay? Someone comes to God, they just help that person do it, but it's not about them. They have to keep their eye on God. They're his representative. So there is a midrash on this. Must be, I think it was Vayikra Rabbah. And Rabbi Ishmael says the reason all of this is going on, his argument was that it was because the two boys were drunk. Okay. And as you read through his argument, he says that the text immediately corrects the problem. So if there was no problem, there would be no reason to insert this text where it's at. Okay? And we see this all throughout Scripture. Like you're reading along and then all of a sudden it changes. Well, the reason it changes is there's a purpose behind that change. Our job is to figure out why it's all of a sudden not in chronological order. God has a purpose to point that out.
But it reminds me of that. You're going along with the narrative of Joseph, and all of a sudden this thing about Judith
Just
and
pops out.
Tamar is
Yeah.
right in the center of it, and you're going, what? Why is this here?
Exactly. And we years ago we went through that that there are literary reasons why this is important to do those things.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you go to a playground, right? And you see, I don't even know if they have these anymore. We used to call them monkey bars. The monkey bars you cross, There's a sign next to the monkey bars, and it says, do not use monkey bars without supervised permission. Why is that sign there?
So someone won't get hurt.
When did that sign get
Or
put
it's there
there?
so somebody doesn't
Yeah.
hurt yourself.
Yeah, someone got hurt, and then they stuck a sign. Now, today, we live in such a litigious society that we actually have bean counters out there that are making up signs to put on things before anything's ever happened. But in general, what happened is someone fell, someone got hurt, someone got sued, someone put up a sign, right? That's what Rabbi Ishmael is saying here, that the reason that's there is because there was an immediate action that happened in the text, and that's why they died. So it said in our verse 8 there, and Jehovah spoke to Aharon saying, why? So what are the reasons that it could be that he's speaking to Aaron alone?
You've got two more sons that are about to do the same thing.
Okay, so there could be a preventative thing to it. What else?
And maybe he is compassionate to Aaron.
How is he demonstrating compassion?
I'm telling you exactly why that happened, and surely you must understand the why.
Okay.
Didn't want it to happen. Let's prevent it from happening again.
So could he have said that in front of everybody?
Well, maybe, but Aaron may not have heard it the same way.
Okay. So in their culture,
Aaron's also the father of the two kids, so he's responsible for them.
true, very true.
And there is this thing about honor and shame, that you don't shame the Cohen in front of the people.
Right.
So he says only, so he speaks to Aaron.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So to do that publicly to him would be a shameful event.
And then will people still follow Aaron?
And then everybody's going to question Aaron, right? Yeah. So when God does this, he does this in private. Okay.
There was enough shame already involved with those two sons dying.
Yeah. That was the public event, right? Yeah. He doesn't want to add to that situation and make it worse, right? Okay, so let me switch notes here.
The school is providing bus shuttle service because of the regatta. And since she's one of the
Teach the children of Israel. Okay, so that took us to 12, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And Moshe spoke to Aharon and to Eleazar and Itamar, his sons, who were left. Take the grain offering that is left over from the offerings made by fire to Jehovah, and eat it without leaven beside the altar, for it is most set apart. So remember we talked about even at Passover, first fruits, we talked about it, unleavened bread. The idea that the priests eat all of this bread that's cooked there, right? So here they're eating the grain. And you shall eat it in a set apart place, because it is yours by law, and your sons by law, of the offerings made by fire to Jehovah, for so I have been commanded. And the breast of the wave offering and the thigh of the contribution you eat in the clean place, you and your sons and your daughters with you, for they are yours by law, and your sons by law, which are given from the slaughterings of peace offerings of the children of Israel. So remember that there were vows that people bring, all these different things. The priests eat that meat. Sometimes the meat is eaten together with you. Sometimes it's just theirs. Depends on which piece it is and stuff like that. And notice here also, it's this is kind of funny how it does this. It says in verse 14, and the breast of the wave offering and the thigh of the contribution you eat in a clean place, you and your sons and your daughters with you. Why would it need to say that?
Well, maybe they need to be taken care of too.
They need food too, don't they? Okay, so it's not just, this isn't a male thing. It's the priesthood family, that because that whole family is set apart, so the whole family can eat it. It's not just the priest doing the sacrifice that eats it. Okay, so the wife could be there, the daughters could be there, everybody could eat it. Okay, because they are set apart at the same level that the offering is set apart. Both are equally holy. Okay, verse 15. The thigh of the contribution and the breast of the wave offering they bring with the offerings of fat made by fire to bring as a wave offering before Yehovah, and it shall be yours and your sons with you, a law forever, as Yehovah has commanded. And Moshe diligently looked for the goat of this purification offering, and saw it was burned up. And he was wroth with Eleazar and Ithamar, the sons of Aharon, who were left, saying, why have you not eaten the sin offering in a set-apart place, since it is most set apart, and Elohim has given it to you to bear the crookedness of the congregation? So let's go back up to 16 for a second. Moshe diligently looked for the goat of the purification offering and saw it was burned up. And he was wroth with Eleazar and Ithamar, the sons of Aaron, who were left, saying, why have you not eaten the purification offering in the set-apart place? So was it burnt up, or was it not eaten?
But you can't burn it up if you eat it.
That's probably why it was burned up, because nobody ate it.
But they were supposed to eat it. They were supposed to eat the whole thing. So just like this is my point I'm giving this up, is that we just finished Passover, and what happens at Passover? Same thing. You eat the lamb, and if you don't eat it, the whole thing gets burned up. Okay. But the Passover wasn't a sin offering. Passover is a Shalomim offering. See, its blood was not brought inside the set-apart place. You should have eaten it without fail in a set-apart place, as I have commanded. And Aharon said to Moshe, see today that they have brought their sin offering and their burnt offering before Yehovah, and matters like these have come to me. If I had eaten the sin offering today, would it have been right in the eyes of Yehovah? And when Moshe heard that, it was good in his eyes. What's the point? He was mourning too, right? So mercy trumps the literal reading of the commandment, I guess.
And all of these things were supposed to be brought and offered cheerfully. How could he have done it cheerfully?
Right.
Like, he didn't like his kids.
Yep.
But that's helpful.
Yay, they're gone. Right when I think you're normal.
Don't ever think that.
Okay, so remember that the role of the priest, we talked about this over in verse 9, 10, 11, role of the priest was to make a distinction between set apart and profane, unclean and clean, and to teach the children of Israel. So now we get to chapter 11, and what do we get?
Probably teaching.
Teaching on?
Clean and unclean.
Clean and unclean, imagine that.
Which,
So just a quick review. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I was going to do, I have a thing to do on the rock hyrax, the chiffon that we've talked about in the past. I have a whole book on that, and I haven't got to read it this year, so we'll have to save that for next year. Book already bought. So, so we break this down into what are the categories, chapter 11.
Clean and unclean.
Clean and unclean, but we have types of animals.
Oh, yeah.
So what's the first type?
Chewing the cud and split hooves.
Chewing the cud and a split hoof. And it has
Four
both, then it's okay.
Yeah.
And if it only has one of the two,
It's not
No,
okay.
then it's not okay. What if it has none of the two?
It's not okay.
Definitely not.
What if I just cut the legs off?
Oh, yeah.
It's still the same animal.
Same animal, still unclean.
Yeah, I'm not going to eat my cat. No, you.
That's the other white meat.
It's the other white meat.
I don't know.
So it's funny. I'm in charge of like all the religious diets in the building.
Right.
And the inmates really don't know what they're doing, so they think the food is better, so they claim something. I don't know how many forms I have right now.
The food, the religious food.
They say I want a kosher diet because I Judaism. So I have a form that I give them that just says, what is it you're looking for in a diet? Where do you practice? Who can I contact? And what are the dietary restrictions? And almost every single one of them says it can't have a cloven hoof or chew the cud.
Really?
It's because somebody misread it, but they're thinking, oh, I'd rather have that for lunch. So what did you write? And so
Oh, how fun.
they're actually writing the opposite of what it is they're supposedly looking for. Just, there are many times I've wanted to say, our diet is just fine if you don't want kosher then, because we don't serve you this. Anyway,
So it's they're misunderstanding the word cloven.
No.
they're completely whoever, every once in a while somebody will get it right, but I'll get them from clusters in a housing area. I'll get 2 or 3 from the same hallway within a few days of each other. And they'll almost always have very similar or the same wording. No cloven hoof or chewing. But they're asking for kosher. Because
So
they're,
they've got it backward.
Yeah.
yeah. Did you actually read that?
Did they actually ask for a Bible first?
They're out there. Anyway.
Okay, so first one is the beast of the field, basically. So chewing the cud, split hoof.
Good.
So that takes us down to the next category, which is
Fishies.
fishies, Scandinavian fishies. So what are the criteria?
Yes on scales, yes on fins.
Has to have both. What if it only has one?
No.
What if it has neither? Like an octopus.
If it has one scale, I guess you're okay.
Just one. As long as it has one. What if two? Maybe 2 for a witness.
Okay.
2
Well,
scales.
it says scales, so you're right.
Plural.
What if they're teeny tiny microscopic?
Like some tuna fish are that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are Orthodox groups that won't eat tuna because of that.
Don't sharks have those tiny scales?
Shark scales
They have
are
skin.
yeah, it's and it's shaped completely. They're like pointy even.
Yeah, you can't go the wrong way.
I don't think I downloaded it on here yet. But if you look at regular scales on
You can
a
actually
regular
separate them
fish,
from the skin.
they're round, and shark scales are actually pointy, microscopically. That's
Because of the
interesting.
scale.
Um,
Say the shape of them, just say the scale.
Yeah. So
I
well,
don't think so because you
But it
can't
wasn't
separate them from the skin.
visible
Yeah.
to them.
yeah, it's invisible to the eye. So it's but it's considered a hide, not scales.
So you can cover the ark with it, but don't eat it.
So you can't
I don't know if you
eat
can
That's
use
dolphin.
shark, those dolphins, but probably very similar.
I was gonna say how.
I'd have to become an expert on scales, and I don't really want to do that. Because I'm never going to eat a
Go ahead
dolphin
and
or a
leave
shark
scales on
anyway.
your eyes then.
Shark
Yeah.
is actually good.
Gentile.
I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah, I ate a lot of weird things.
I did too. What's mahi mahi?
Tuna.
Is that tuna?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's some
I was
people out
trying.
There, that was for a while. There was a teaching going around Facebook about tuna. I'm not grabbing tuna today. And there was also one about chickens being
Has to do with the gizzard. The whole point of the gizzard is that it acts as a filter.
It grinds up food.
Yeah, because I've
To help
always
some
wondered
meat.
why in the world the chicken was clean, because they eat anything,
Mhm.
literally.
Oh boy. So third category then,
Winged and swarming.
winged,
birds.
winged,
Birds.
winged things.
Birds first.
Actually,
then
birds
winged.
first.
Of course, birds have wings too.
So what if it's a bird and it doesn't have wings?
What's a
That's
bird that
something
doesn't
else.
have wings?
What if it's a bird that doesn't fly?
Does it say anything about flying?
I don't know. Well, the
Well, I
word
can't think of any
the
non-flying.
word for flying is oaf, which is birds. So
Well, if you think about it, the birds that are unclean are, well, penguins aren't clean. Ostriches aren't clean. Emus aren't clean.
Right.
And they don't fly.
what about dodos?
They're dead.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
How about the owl and the nighthawk?
It's basically birds that eat, carrion, or hunt.
Birds of prey.
Yeah.
Talon-like things. Okay, so what's after that?
Creepy
Insects.
crawlies.
Creepy crawly things. Okay, what do we know about them?
Still want to try those cricket brownies.
So we can help you with
They
that.
have to be able to jump.
I'm not eating your brownies.
They might.
What if they're keto?
No, I looked up that
marijuana keto?
brownie mix, and it wasn't keto. They use sugar in it. So,
What if we made cricket keto brownies?
well, even the flour, they mix it with other things.
It's not
just
pure
straight.
cricket bodies.
Oh, there has to be a way.
I know.
Then it would taste like a bug.
You can make it from scratch. Although they sell the cricket snacks that, they have, I think they have ranch and they have buffalo. What's buffalo?
Like Criquitos or something?
Criquitos? Oh,
Yeah.
oh man,
I love it.
cheese
like a
flavored
mod switch.
Criquitos.
I think they do have cheese.
Oh
If
man.
anyone's interested, if you want to go into the liquor store, they sell bugs in there to eat.
That's
In the
'cause
bottom
people
of
are
a
showing up
bottle?
under the influence.
No,
That's a worm.
This was up on a counter.
A worm is a creepy crawly
Which
thing.
store do you go to, man?
That one in Springfield, every once in a while we get something out of there. But right up at the checkout counter, there were these little packages of whatever. So Bill and I looked at each other and goes, oh,
The one right
gross.
down here?
Wow.
Yeah, right next to the raw tin or whatever.
Yeah.
How Rin. Yeah.
Now
Huh.
you're making me hungry.
For bugs.
All right.
Oh, Rin.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So let's look at 20 real quick here and get you back on gear. So all flying insects that creep on all fours is an abomination to you. So if they fly and creep on four legs, that's bad. Only these you do eat of every flying insect that creeps on all fours. So exception to the rule. Those which have jointed legs above their feet with which to leap on the earth. These of them you do eat. The locust after its kind, the destroying locust after its kind, the cricket after its kind, and the grasshopper after its kind. But all other flying things which have 4 feet is an abomination to you. How many feet does a fly have?
6. It's an
I
insect.
thought they,
Is it
I thought
six?
they were 6.
I'm
Too
not going to eat.
How about a gnat?
No.
Well, they're just a baby shark.
Can't see them.
Can't see them, who cares?
Those things.
Um,
Well, you eat those on accident half the time.
like, especially if you're like riding a motorcycle without a helmet.
It is summertime. The creek flies always land in your line. Eat that.
They shouldn't have to chew your wine.
Yeah. It's okay.
Wait,
It's okay, girl.
what about the jumping spider?
8 legs.
Yes.
And it's not just the rear legs.
Have 8 legs, yeah.
Plus, it's not the back 2 that are hinged, so to speak.
They would have to have hinges, wouldn't they? or articulations is what it said.
Now this is it says you will be made unclean if you touch their dead bodies. How many times do we all kill an insect and
Wait
toss
a
it
minute, where does
outside?
it say that?
24.
24 and 25.
I kill them, but I don't touch them.
I don't
Get them where they're at. They're in my house.
Okay, so in verse 24, what is the these? What is the antecedent?
By these, moreover, you will be made unclean. Well, I would say
Touching.
Any of those unclean things mentioned in all the previous chapters?
Well, no.
just
I would
bugs.
just say it's winged creatures with 4 legs.
Yeah, so you go back to 23, but all other flying insects which have 4 feet is an abomination to you. By these you are made unclean. Anyone touching the carcass of any of them is unclean to evening.
So what would those be, like a moth? Because what has 4 legs and flies?
Well, so
That's not a joke.
yeah, I know.
What has 4 legs and flies?
Those
a rabbi walks into a bar with a moth.
those little what are they called? Those little bugs that I've been picking up and putting outside.
Elder bugs.
Yeah.
Well, they have 6 legs.
They have 6 or they have
Yeah,
5.
so this was actually my question: is so what are we talking about here? Do we have anything today that we need to worry about not to touch there?
That's a good question because I don't turn them upside down to look. How many legs do you have?
Just tickle
I just
Just
trip them.
don't touch them. Just walk them with your shoe.
They fall
Don't
over.
touch 'em.
Yeah, but if it lands on your counter, I'll have to look at the next one I
Well,
find.
no, they have to be
Winged?
they have to be dead. Do
A
they
carcass
not?
is dead.
In order
Yes.
for it to be a carcass.
So
So there's 2 of them.
you
It's
don't
hard
kill
high, so
them,
would that be
you
still?
pick them up very
if you're killing it as you're touching it, does that count?
gently. I do.
Yeah.
That's how I
Yeah.
exterminate them.
So I can't think of any common things that necessarily fall into that category. That like especially during the summer in some basis that I would worry about. But maybe there was something over there back then that really fit this category that they were familiar with.
Well, every place on the planet has their own peculiar kind of bugs.
Mhm.
Tucson, Arizona, you can have it, and in Arkansas, their bugs are too big. They're too many.
So after we figure out what this is and if it applies into our life today, and I touch one, what happens next?
Well, you can't go to the temple. Not really much of an issue right now.
So how do I fix that though?
Take a bath.
And
Wait for it to get dark.
Wash your clothes.
you gotta go do laundry. Okay.
Oh, take a shower. You don't have to put your dirty clothes back on.
Well, can you shower with your clothes on
You
and
can.
just
Then you're also washing them at the same time.
That's what I would do. So. I mean, it's in a desert, so
You'll dry fast.
Okay, so verse 26. Every beast that has a split hoof, not completely divided, or does not chew the cud is unclean to you. Anyone who touches their carcass is unclean. Why is that sentence put here? Why is it talking about beasts of the field again?
Mine does not say carcass. It says whoever touches them becomes unclean.
Yeah.
So if I touch my cat, I become unclean.
The carcass
It's living.
Mine
This
doesn't
is
say
in-
anything
inner-
about carcasses.
is I've got these 2 little marks on it that encase it. So that must not be in the.
Is it in
Well,
there?
we'll have to look it up.
JPS doesn't have a carcass word in the English part of it.
How does JPS read?
Every animal that has true hooves, but without clefts through the hooves, that does not chew the cud, they are unclean for you. Whoever touches them shall be unclean. So it would be not zot.
Let's look this up.
Oh, it says ken. So them.
What verse is that, please?
26.
Check.
27 has carcass in it, but 26 doesn't.
No, my 26 does. Like I say, I think it's been added.
26. Let's see what this says.
Yeah, 27 has carcass in it.
King James puts carcass in italics.
Maybe that's because I like touching things.
Everyone that touches them, zot, shall be unclean.
On 27, it talks about creatures that walk on their paws, dogs and cats, and they say carcasses. So maybe the Father knew that we would all have pets, and
so if the cat's in a box in the freezer, you're not unclean. It actually happened.
How would that actually happen?
Practical life experience.
Yes. So okay, so that was because I didn't look up the word carcass in 26 there. So anyone who touches them is unclean.
Meat freezer.
It would make sense to put carcass there because we've been talking about carcasses. So my question was, why is it talking about beasts of the field? That sentence would have fit better earlier.
Yeah, but you didn't write it.
I know, but there has to be a reason that God put it there.
Summation, maybe.
So even though it doesn't say carcass, is he still implying carcass there in 26?
Yeah, because
Otherwise, you couldn't touch them if they were
Have a good
alive.
time riding your horse without touching it.
yeah, for sure.
That makes no sense.
Okay.
And your donkey's unclean. You're using it to work your field.
So Yeshua rode a mule, right?
Did he go to temple that day?
He rode into the temple, right?
So I'm thinking it's okay.
So carcass, it should be in italics there, but the implication would be consistent. Correct. So 27, whoever goes on and whatever goes on its paws among all the creatures of all fours, those are unclean to you. Anyone who touches their carcass is unclean until the evening, and he who picks up their carcass has to wash his garments and shall be unclean until evening. They are unclean to you. When we carried the lamb, we went to the temple, sacrificed the lamb.
It's a clean animal, so you're not unclean.
So I'm not unclean because
It's a clean animal.
Right. 29, and these are unclean among you, the creeping creatures that creep on the earth, the mole, the mouse, the tortoise after its kind, the gecko, the land crocodile, the sand reptile, the sand lizard, the gecko on the insurance company, and the chameleon. These are unclean to you among all that creep. Anyone who touches them when they are dead becomes unclean until evening. So when they're dead, we're talking about a carcass again. So that whole section is really on carcae. It's actually carcasses.
It's like octopuses.
Octopi. Like Latin and Greek are different. I mean, who cares? And whatever any of them is dead, whatever any of them in its dead state falls upon, becomes unclean. Whether it is any wooden object or garment or skin or sack. Any object in which work is done, it is put in water, and it shall be unclean until evening, then it shall be clean. So we shouldn't put dead things on things. We shouldn't put carcae on things.
Pick up a dead mouse. Don't throw it in your salad bowl.
And don't crush him in your salad.
So if I put them in my garbage can, though, my garbage can
Are
is
you going to
unclean.
eat out of your garbage can?
No, but someone might.
Well, that's their issue, not yours.
Okay. But if my garbage can does become unclean, how would I fix it? Wash it, and it would be clean by evening, right? Okay.
But if it's an
I'm so
earthenware, it has to be broken.
Those would be really hard to
Garbage
lift
can be
anyway.
porous. Just talked about this
Yep.
last week.
What if you glaze it? Now it's not porous anymore.
Just pour a little stainless steel over the top of it.
Just put an iron glaze on it.
Now it's glass.
So any earthen vessel into which any of them falls whether it has become glazed or not. Oh no. Whatever it is, and it becomes unclean, and you break it. Why break it?
So somebody else doesn't accidentally eat out of it.
So I can't just throw it in my garbage can with the mouse.
If you throw it hard.
Break it, yes. Okay, good. Okay, so you're saving steps that way. I like that, yeah.
You just don't want, because
You don't want to push your neighbors
forest, it can
off to
be-
the ditch.
mice carry a lot of diseases, for instance. And if you just said, oh, I'll just wash it, it'll be fine. Not necessarily.
What if you don't like your neighbor?
Yeah.
Oh, we're commanded to like our neighbor, aren't we? Yeah, that's right.
Love your neighbor.
Okay, so I can't do this to them.
You want to rub a dead rabbit all over their furniture or what?
Yeah, it was a different movie.
Oh.
So any of the food which might be eaten on which water any of the food which might be eaten on which water comes becomes unclean, and the drink which might be drunk from it becomes unclean. So what's the it?
Good thing.
The vessel.
I'm thinking it's the vessel, yeah. Okay. And on whatever any of their carcae falls upon becomes unclean. An oven or cooking range. They had cooking ranges back then? Who wrote this? It is broken down. They are unclean and are unclean to you.
Now that might pose a problem back then, because it's a hearth or
Brick oven.
an open stove, and you've got this, and you have to rebuild this.
So you would probably try to guard that then.
I would
Not fry a
assume.
rat on your rocks.
Okay. By the way, this just hit me. At Shavuot, since we can have leavened items, we were thinking of using, because we're going to meet at Carla's. She gave us permission to use her outdoor pizza oven. So it might be fun to cook pizza and test that, and then move towards maybe next year using do a goat. But I figured maybe starting with something light like pizza might be a better first try.
I think we need to find out what condition it's in.
Yeah, it was just.
And if you have 30 people and you're cooking one small pizza at a time, potentially.
I have pictures of it.
Okay,
It's
did
pretty
you
big.
see the
but-
inside, how big it is?
Yeah, I have a picture of it. So
Make
see, I knew you guys
It's
would.
only
Ask,
that
I
big.
knew you guys would ask me these questions.
But
like they
your
do with,
picture is like 4 by 3. You can't put a pizza in that.
We'll put it up this big.
Those 7
Actually,
That opens the bottom, though, that's why.
Albert,
Verse 36.
Albert,
But a fountain or a well,
No.
a collection of water, is clean, but whatever touches their carcass is unclean. What?
But dead anything falls in the river, you can pull it out and still drink the water out of the river.
So if I have a well,
It's still moving water because it replenishes.
okay. So the old way of destroying a stronghold, a fortress, was to throw dead animals in their
Yeah, because there
water
would be
supply.
contamination from bacteria and things would make them all sick.
Okay. So why does that not apply here?
Well,
If
it
it's a
does.
spring, the water's continually running.
Mhm.
And the bad stuff just flows away.
Can I leave the animal there?
Probably not a good idea.
So if I remove the animal, then the water would be fine. Is
But
the
now
point.
You become unclean.
So I go stand in the water, and then by evening I'll be fine. Okay, so these things are all,
Then you have contaminated.
these things can all be worked out. Verse 37, and when any of their carcass,
Okay.
their plural carcass singular, I don't know if that's right, falls on any planting seed which is to be sown, it is clean. So if I drop my mouse on a wheat seed, the wheat seed is okay.
Yeah, you're not going to eat it. You're going to be planting it. It's going to become a plant.
Okay.
Anything it produces is not affected.
But when any water is put on the seed and any part of such carcass falls on it, it is unclean.
Yeah.
Sown seed is usually dry, so nothing's really going to stick to it much anyway.
So
But if it's all wet and you throw something on there.
so if I have a vessel with water in it, I put some seed in it.
Yeah, like if you're
And
gonna
the mouse
sprout
falls
I'm gonna
in.
sprout something, yeah, and then I take a mouse and I put it in there. I just got to think up hypotheticals here. I don't know how to do this.
Let's say it falls in.
Mouse crawls in there, so now that seed's no good.
Right, because the
And
seed
the
is going to be
bud-
absorbing the water.
Bacteria or whatever.
Yeah.
Pot's no good either.
Mousticles.
If it was wooden,
Or
porous, yeah, clay, something like that. But if it was glazed, it'd be good.
Say even.
Can you hear me?
No, he added that.
Oh,
But when any water is put in this way, we did that one. 39, and when any of the beasts which are yours for food dies, he who touches its carcass becomes unclean until evening.
We can
Where are
hear
you
you,
touching
but I
this
don't
word?
think Albert can.
You have to get it out of the field.
You're trying to get it in a hole.
Okay, you're going to bury it, okay?
So, okay, just instead.
The rake would definitely be unclean. And I don't know if we have to break it. I suppose if you wash the rake, then the rake would be clean again, right?
Yeah, that has
Ruth, can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah, I can, but I guess Albert
And he
can't
who
hear
eats
me.
of its carcass has to wash his garments.
Yeah, up at the
and shall
top,
be
there's a place where you
unclean until
can,
evening. And he who
with three
picks up
dots that says
carcass
more,
has to
that
wash
you
his
can raise your
garments
hand.
and shall be unclean
Maybe
until
that
evening.
would
So if I'm
help.
driving down Hill Road going
Oh, okay.
and I smack a deer,
Up, say save
or
chat.
one of those turkeys. There's a lot of turkeys out there. Well, there's a lot
It's
of
different.
deer
It's
out
like
there.
hunting. You just step out and bleed it.
Well, I'm just trying to tell him that
But if you're driving down, you find it.
that Carla's oven does have a
Okay.
large
Oh, look, there's
pizza
a fresh
oven.
hit deer.
I mean, it can be cut. You
So I
Cook a
then
large
pick
piece.
it up, move it off the road.
We're now on.
I'm unclean. What do I have to do?
Take a bath, wait till evening.
I bathe and my garments take a bath too, right? Both have to happen.
If you sit in your vehicle, do you cause it to be?
These are the problems. They didn't have vehicles to worry about. Maybe I sit on my donkey.
Not
Who
if you have
cares?
California emissions. For that.
What if I just continually run back and forth over it until it's flat and then it doesn't bother anybody?
You can do that.
My car would still be unclean though, right?
Oh, it certainly would be. Probably.
Yeah, maybe
Both,
think about
both figuratively and literally.
How many bugs do you hit with your car? I mean, we can take this too far.
Right. Okay. Where is that?
All those coming.
And when any of the beasts of the fields was yours, food dies. We did that. Who eats the carcass has. We did that one. 41. And every creeping creature that creeps on the earth is an abomination. It is not eaten,
On purpose.
except. Was there an exception for a creeping creature? No, those were flying insects. Grasshoppers are considered flyers. Okay. So anything that creeps is an abomination. Whatever crawls on its stomach and whatever goes on all fours and whatever has many feet among all creeping creatures that creep on the earth, these you do not eat, for they are an abomination. So what are creeping things that have many feet? Centipedes, millipedes, all of those peaty things, right?
And spiders.
Would snakes fall under this?
They're on their tongue.
Okay. Because they're on their stomach. That's correct. Okay. And in that word stomach, verse 42, whatever crawls on its stomach is a vav.
Oh yeah, the center of Torah.
This is the dead center of.
Actually, that's up in 40. That's not that far down. Oh, it is 42. I'm sorry.
It's 42.
You're right.
Yeah. That is the halfway part between all of Torah. So what's the word picture for a vav?
A nail.
A nail. So all of Torah hangs on that letter. So if you imagine a picture frame has a wire behind it, all of Torah is hanging on that letter.
Don't eat snakes.
Stomach. So if you were to count all the letters from Genesis 1, Bereshit, to the last letter of Deuteronomy, Israel, everything between the Bet and the Lamed, count letter by letter back, you, in Hebrew, not in English, you end up at that vav. Okay, let's finish off this chapter. We'll be done. Do not make yourselves abominable with any creeping creature that creeps, and do not make yourselves unclean with them, lest you be defiled by them. For I am Jehovah your Elohim, and you shall set yourselves apart. And you shall be set apart. Why? Because he is set apart. So we're supposed to mimic him. And do not defile yourselves with any creeping creature that creeps on the earth. For I am Jehovah, who is bringing you up out of the land of Mitzrayim to be your Elohim. You shall be set apart, for I am set apart. Peter quotes that in chapter 1. This is the Torah of the beasts and the birds and every living creature that moves in the waters, and of every creature that creeps on the earth, to make a distinction between the unclean and the clean, and between the living creature that is eaten and the living creature that is not eaten. So some living creatures are food, some living creatures are not food.
Friends, not food.
Friends, not food. Good. All right, it all makes sense?
Mostly.
We're going to make it home. We're of no worry about animals on the way home, what to do, how to handle them. Just don't eat them. Well, but if you do touch them, take care of it. I mean, this is where the medical community actually obeys Torah better than everybody else, because everything for them is gloved to make sure that there's no contaminants that will be spread. So that's actually one area of Torah that we keep within a section of our society extremely well to prevent disease and stuff like that.
Except that they eat unclean things. And
Yeah.
that causes
Although
Lots.
I think some of it is intuitively not. I mean, you got your exception.
Some people eat spiders.
Eating is a cultural experience.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are places you go on the earth that people eat virtually anything.
Albert, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
China.
Albert, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Albert.
Camels don't stew.
All right.
No. It was squid
oh yes. Oh
with octopus ink something.
and they
Oh,
they
man.
had some kind of rice over these creatures and it sounded disgusting. And that it was
Chewy.
really,
I didn't like it.
We made squid fritters in high school. Because we dissected the squid and then we ate them.
Yeah.
Yay.
Calamari.
I'm glad I didn't go to your high school.
No.
We dissected
Calamari.
fetal pigs too, but we didn't eat those.
Yeah, we got the fetal pigs. We didn't do the squid stuff.
Yeah, they come in 6-packs.
Why don't we stand and pray real quick, and
The shrink wrap 6-pack of pigs.
we'll let everybody online disappear. Bill, you want to close this out, please?
Blessed are you, Jehovah, our Elohim, King of the universe. Father, we come before you, thanking you that you remember your servants, that you gather us together as your call, that you teach us. Thank you for reminding us. Thank you for keeping us set apart, clean, safe. Father, we come before you thanking you also for the blessing of food that you provide. Please continue. Father, we give you thanks in the name of your Son, Yeshua, our soon coming Mashiach.
Amen.
Well, maybe.
Well, to everybody online, thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys Wednesday night for Romans chapter 8, or maybe a review in some of chapter 8, and then next Shabbat. Oh, I see Ruth has a question. Let me see if I can unmute Ruth here. Sorry, I didn't see that earlier. Mute. Unmute. Lower hand.
You can hear me now?
Ruth, did you have a question?
I didn't have a question. I just wanted to tell you that. Can you hear me?
Yes, that comes out.
I'm not hearing anything. Hold on. Let me see if I can figure out why. Oh, I'm hearing something.
We're going to.
Can you hear me?
Oh, now I can hear you. What was your
Okay.
question?
No, I didn't have a question. I just want to let you know that the Carla's oven, it will cook one large pizza at a time.
Oh, say it again. The oven will cook one large pizza at a time.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that.
You bet.
Have a great day, guys.
You too. Shabbat shalom. Bye, Albert.
Shabbat shalom.
Bye, Albert.
End meeting.